right now on 23.5. America's bravest hotshots putting their lives on the line to fight the deadly wildfires that are sparking up all too often in our drought-stricken West. One story stands out. Tragically, a group losing their lives in a sudden shifting flame. The 19 firefighters of the Yarnell Hill Fire. We will talk with the author of a new book on that tragic event. And forget about surfers who are in the search of an endless summer. We met one guy who is amped for the endless winter. We're talking Chris Burkert. Stoked for the iciest waves on the planet, plus 30 million tons of plastic tossed out in this country every year, and a lot of it ending up in our oceans. So let's meet a woman who turns this beachfront blight into art. All right now on 23.5. They are called hotshots. They are elite firefighters, the first line of defense, battling raging wildfires, and sometimes they're the only line of defense. June 28, 2013, one of the darkest days in hotshot history. This is the Yarnell Hill Fire. 19 firefighters overrun by flames in the hills outside of Prescott, Arizona. All of these men losing their lives. A tragedy that still has questions lingering today. Author Fernanda Santos takes a look with her new book, The Fire Line. This fire really blew up quickly, and part of it was weather related.
Right.
There was a series of storms that was just off to
northeast. They come from the
storm.
northeast. The storm had hooked the flames and turned them around, so the fire that was going north started coming in the opposite direction.
To surround them,
Exactly,
basically.
exactly.
Wind shifted.
So they are at the top of a mountain. This was a fire run by people they knew very, very well. Some of them were fire officials, fire people who trained them to become good firefighters. And I think that they were asked twice to come down the mountain to help in the town, the little town of Yarnell down there. So that, I'm sure, was something that influenced that decision.
They might have stayed in their head, right.
Right, and you know, I believe they knew the fire was coming their way because they had the survivor, a lookout, who was about 1 mile, 2 miles away on another mountain and saw the flames come and warned them and got out very safely, got a ride from somebody, got out of the wild, and the 19 guys stayed back there. And it's easy for us, you know, to Monday morning quarterback what happened, look back and pick apart all the decisions they made. But these were not inexperienced, you know, guys who had never been in fire. I mean, so they knew, presumably knew very well what they were doing and had gotten out of hairy situations before. So unfortunately that day, when they made that decision, I believe thinking they could make it, you know, things didn't work out the way they had planned. So the last radio communication that we have from that scene, you can still hear the chainsaws buzzing in the background.
Okay, I'm here with Granite Mountain Hotshots. Our escape route has been cut off. We are preparing a deployment site, and we are burning out around ourselves in the brush. And I'll give you a call when we are under the shelters.
So these guys were trying to clear as much brush as they could to create a safety zone, a place that had no vegetation, no fuel, as they call it, to burn, so that they could deploy their shelter and give themselves a chance of surviving. A shelter is a last resort. If you have to deploy a shelter, you know that something didn't go as you had planned, but it gives you a protection against heat, not direct flame contact. But they didn't have another option at that time. So that's what they had to do. It's a very risky job, but whenever they make a decision, they think it's the best decision they can make at that moment. So there was a lot of preoccupation among reporters about who gave the order for the crew to leave an area the fire had already burned, go down a canyon that was full of vegetation that had not yet burned, towards a town that the fire was threatening. And I thought, if they went down, it's because they agreed it was the right thing to do. So what really intrigued me was the fact that they all stayed together. None of them ran, none of them decided to take off and see if they could make it to the ranch on their own. None of them, you know, dropped their backpack in one end and was found far away from the crew. They were all within a space of about 20 feet by 30 feet. And to me, there were many things implied in that last stand against fire, against flames. And I wanted to understand why.
Check one. Todd, that you? Yeah, go ahead, crew. Yeah, Todd, on scene. 18, confirmed. Okay, I copy. And let's go ahead and obviously secure the area, and we'll go from there.
You describe visiting the scene and seeing where they were found, and they were all kind of found tightly together. Tell me why that struck you.
You know, it sounds a little, it was a very personal, emotional moment for me when I got to the site where they had deployed.
And by that you meant
the site where they took out their shelters,
put it over them, and then laid down for the fire.
Exactly. When I got there, what I saw was not so much the desperation and the sadness of those last moments. What I saw was a message of unity and teamwork and loyalty. It was one of those things that I felt, who are these people who are ready to lay down with their brothers and wait for a fire to come over and hope that if they survive, they're all going to survive together? And to me, that was a much bigger story than the story of a fire. It was a story about human connection, about interaction, about believing in one another.
Bonding, really.
Right. And these guys all of a sudden showed me that, you know what, nothing we do is done alone. And there's teamwork here, and there's loyalty, and there's bonding, there's brotherhood, there's friendship. And this, to me, is the enduring message of this fire.
Courage lies in every heart, and the expectation is that one day it will be summoned. And I know, we know, all of them were heroes long before, as I said, we knew them.
You spent a lot of times with their families, and I can only imagine how emotional it was for the families, of course, but also for you. Tell me a little bit about the families of people who support their husband or wife to be a hotshot.
You know, you kind of have to be a very independent person to. In fact, I say in the book that divorce is a common ending for hotshot love stories, because your husband or wife will usually leave home around mid-April in the West, go out, fight fire, may come home, you know, here and there, pop in for a couple of days, and then be out again, and not come back until mid-October. You will be sometimes hearing from him or from her when they're out on the fire line, sometimes not, because they may be very busy, they may be in an area that doesn't have cell phone reception. In fact, Eric Marsh, the superintendent of the Granite Mountain Hotshots, got a satellite phone so that he could call his wife, and his men, the members of the crew, they were all men, could call home as well. One of the guys, Travis Turbyfield, had 2 little girls at home. Many of them had children, and he had a copy of Goodnight Moon in his backpack. And he would call home at night and read the book before his daughters went to sleep. Those were real people, you know, people like I could see myself and my husband in those scenes. And, you know, the wives that I met, were pretty used to that. I mean, some of them struggled more than others, but they understood that comes with the territory. You married somebody who does this job, you have to accept that, because loving that person comes with loving the job they do.
Up next, what can we do so this never happens again?
There is a proposal in the very early stages in Congress right now, and it's important because that can make a difference between somebody living and dying.
When the Hotshots were surrounded by flames, a DC-10 full of fire retardant was overhead, but the air tanker never received the crew's location.
I'll never forget this story. I won't ever forget that day, the Yarnell Hill Fire. What can we do so this never happens again?
First, I think we have to accept that we can't stop it. There is no way, in my opinion, that you can say, if I do X, Y, and Z, no one will ever again die in a wildfire. Because it's like saying a police officer will never again fire his gun when he encounters a dangerous situation, somebody charges at him, you know. There are certain aspects of the job that are very, very dangerous, and there's only so much we can do to mitigate that danger. Now, can we improve communications? Yes. Can we equip these crews with GPS locators so that someone somewhere is tracking them, and so if they are on the path of an incoming fire, they can make sure that that specific crew is warned and told to take shelter, get away, go someplace else because you're in a dangerous position. That's doable. There is a proposal in the very early stages in Congress right now, but that's one of the things they're discussing, and it's important because that could make a difference between somebody living and dying, and we should think long and hard about that.
What does it take to be a hotshot?
First and foremost, I think it takes an absolute love for being dirty for a very long time, for working really hard for 14 days straight with no break.
Yeah.
And for absolutely understanding that the job can never be done by one person alone. You have to work in groups. These are the elite among hand crews that fight wildfires. So these are the guys who work on the ground, closest to the flames. So when we watch on TV the 40-foot flames, these are the teams that are right there digging fire line to try to prevent those flames from crossing over and hitting a town or burning an area that shouldn't be burned.
And they work in teams closely, and they can truly be out for extended periods of time. So they carry incredible loads, heavy packs. Give me an example of what's in a Hotshots pack that they carry with them all day.
Well, the minimum weight they carry is usually 40 pounds. And in their pack, they have water, they have foot powder, meals ready to eat, MREs, because many times they're in parts of the forest where there's no reach, so they have to just eat those little meals they carry in their bags. They carry tools that are landscaping tools, construction tools.
Shovels, axes.
Pickaxes, Pulaskis, which is a half adze, half axe. It's a combination tool. It's one of the main tools used in wildland firefighting. They carry chainsaws. The load can go anywhere from 40 pounds to 100 pounds. And many of these guys are not really bulky, big, muscular guys. A lot of them are very lean, but somehow they figure out a way to balance themselves and carry that for 16 hours straight. The shifts usually run for 16 hours, and they work 2 weeks straight without a break.
These firefighters are incredible. We've been on the ground with them a lot covering these wildfires. They're funny.
They are.
Wonderful people. Brave individuals.
They're very smart people. They are very attuned to the environment, to nature. They have an understanding of nature that's very nuanced and very different than the one that a scientist might have. And they absolutely cannot function in an office all day. In fact, in the Granite Mountain Hotshots, one of the guys, Garrett Zupiger, had a degree in business management from University of Arizona, but he was fighting fires because going to an office, putting a suit and a tie was not his thing. And he was very happy doing that.
Been with them when they have fought fires all day to exhaustion, drop their pack and sleep where they are.
Right.
Get up, water down, and go again.
Increasingly, this is something we have to think about because wildfires for long were a phenomenon that only occurred in the West, but now it happens everywhere. Fires are getting bigger, they are getting hotter. Forests for many decades were not managed properly. We used to put out fires right as they started, so we eliminated the natural role of fire of being sort of the janitor of the forest, right? So we had these overgrown forests, now we have a warmer climate, drying climate, and that all together creates for these very dangerous situations that these men and women face. So I think if I made people care about these people as humans, then they perhaps would start thinking about how is it that we need to approach this dangerous job in this changing world of climate, global warming, however you want to call it.
You make some really good points. And number one, our changing climate. But number two, that a lot of people talk about, and that's forestry management.
Right.
There was a period of time where there would be an all-year plan to groom forests. What did you find out about those kinds of things?
The plans still exist, but there's no money for it. And the reason there's no money for it is that we spend so much money fighting fires, so we're sort of caught in this vicious cycle. The Forest Service last year spent half of its entire budget to fight fires. For several years now, they have tried in Congress to change the way we fund wildland firefighting, to put the money to fight fires in the same pot where we have the money to do post-hurricane recovery, flood recovery, an emergency, a disaster type of fund, and then use the Forest Service budget to do what you were talking about, the annual constant job of prescribed burns, which are the fires that we intentionally set under control.
Take the fuel out.
Exactly, because what we want to do is clear the forest floor. So if there is a fire, the fire doesn't carry from the bottom to the tops of the trees because that's when it travels and it doesn't stop. Look what happened in Canada recently. Nobody could stop that fire, because once it's on the crowns of the trees and it's a thick forest and it's very dry, there is no way you can put men and women there and tell them it's your job to stop it, because it's a death sentence essentially. And a lot of people don't understand that. I had people ask me, why didn't they stop that fire? And I said, you can't. Those kind of fires you can't stop, and those are the fires that we increasingly see in this country.
The Yarnell Hill Fire was the largest loss of life for U.S. firefighters since the September 11th terrorist attacks. We may never know all of the answers to all of our questions. Coming up next, one man's trips to the Arctic for nearly 2 decades have made him a renowned artist and activist.